Okay.
He's a real narcissist. But anyhow,
Okay.
um,
All right. Well, it just happened to work out that way. Thank you for
not going
that.
to be working out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's more of a narcissist thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say it's more of a male thing because I know so many narcissists and all the ones I've dated will come in, they'll swoop in, and it's like you walk into a narcissist will walk into a room, let's just say a bar, restaurant, whatever, and they're not really like seeing you. They just it's like a heat-seeking missile. They want to go
Mhm.
towards the most beautiful thing in the room. And we'll use guys as an example. So they see the prettiest girl. Literally, somebody just did this to me like a few months ago, and I saw it in real life. They like swoops towards you, and they just want to see, okay, what kind of sort of how can I fill my narcissistic supply here, right?
Mhm.
How much attention can I get? They're just working the room. That's what they
Mhm.
do. They want to get the most attention, and they're not really listening to you though. They're looking at the door. They're going, okay, is someone more interesting going to come in? And so I found that so fascinating in this specific situation. But men in general, yeah, I think it's easier for them to try to be the conquerors, right? And they're like, okay, I've conquered it. Moving on to the next, right? Moving on to the next victim.
Mm.
And I don't think
So
women are
weird.
as much like that, but they're still like that, where they're like, oh, I'm drawn towards the hottest guy. For
Yeah.
me, I'm always drawn towards the tallest guy because
Okay.
I'm 5'11".
I was going to say you're tall. You're tall. Obviously, if we
Right.
were in a room, I would see you, and my narcissistic, I would think, how can I convince this really tall woman next to me because I'm 5'7" or 8, and I'd be really short next to.
Oh
We would
wow.
look funny if we were ever next to each other. But
Right.
I look a lot bigger, on camera, I think. But
Yeah.
I would automatically be like, wow, that one's out. So next one, and that would be the narcissist in me, right? Because I'd see
Right.
somebody like you and just go to the next one that would fit I guess my menu for the night of what I could take advantage of, right, or
Mhm.
whatever that is.
Right.
Do you think narcissism is sex related, or can a narcissist be someone that also goes maybe in a business? Because I often compare my narcissism and my behaviors, and I say my narcissism, my behaviors that could
Mhm.
appear to be narcissism, to also how I deal with business. I dealt with the same way. Like I was a bull, man. I was a bull in a china shop and very successful. I've ran $30 million budgets for town government when I was in politics. I've been in, elected office, and I was like, just throw it out there. They called me Baby Trump. I mean, I was just a really good, successful business guy, but that ability probably came from narcissism.
Right. Well, narcissist is not like it's not like compartmentalized just to sex or the opposite sex. It consumes your whole entire life.
Mm.
And but it's interesting because okay, back to the Enneagram, which it reveals instantly a lot about people on a really deep level. So the other thing is I'm thinking you could be like me. So I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, I'm a challenger and I'm a protector. We're super straightforward, right? My second number highest up is a 3. So it could not be that you're a narcissist. I'm not trying to say you're not a narcissist. You could be,
Mm.
but it could be that personality, natural leaders, right? We're so good at telling people what to do and just getting the thing done. And we're considered snowplows. So if you're not in a very healthy state, Kevin, you can just plow over people
You call me a
and
snow a snowplow? A snowplow is what you said?
yeah, that's what they're called.
Okay.
We're called an 8 on the Enneagram. We're called snowplows because we like to pave the way for people. This is what you're doing now. But there's also levels of health. So you could be unhealthy, average, or healthy. So when you're unhealthy, you're plowing people over to get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of can be super self-centered. You're just like, this is what I want. I'm going for it. I don't care who's in the way or who I hurt or what I damage. I'm getting this. So that could be an 8 on the Enneagram. That's not
Mm-hmm.
super healthy, not just narcissism.
Interesting. So I'm learning a lot about there's a lot of numbers associated to bad behavior. That's one thing.
Mhm,
I guess
mhm,
there's like these numbers that are associated on these different charts and everything. And one of the things I also learned about some of the behaviors were that they were so natural that I didn't have knowledge of them. I
mhm,
didn't see myself. It took me hitting, and you talked about something earlier, and I want to share with you that I also have question wanting to live. In fact,
mhm.
my inspiration for living and accepting Christ happened on December 17th of 2022. I was turning 53 years old, and I had a rifle in my hand, and I was ready to commit suicide. And by the love of God, um, that didn't take place. And my journey since then has been this awakening really of experiences. And at the time I was still in a relationship. And since that relationship had ended, I've been just in a dark place, still with Christ. And I'm wondering, I guess the question is, can people battle through multiple levels of things while taking on some of these things? Because it's hard to say, I want to fix all that stuff when I'm so depressed and can't get out of bed because I'm sad. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay. I love this. But quick question. What prevented you from committing suicide?
Oh, great. Well, I didn't want to make it about me, but it's fair. This is fair. So
suspenseful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And so, so for me to share completely with you, I never, you mentioned something earlier, not realizing that trauma from a child, right? And so I realized, and how I was able to expose the trauma as a child was that I started to really realize that I was visiting my mom in the same prison that I retired from as a correction officer. So I was brought up in sort of think about that kind of environment. It was a trailer park setting. And my parents, they're both together in Daytona Beach, Florida right now, in the blue collar capital of retirement. And they're great people. And I have a good, solid Christian, love for them. But I had a hard upbringing. And I never admitted I was molested until I was talking to Stormy Daniels on my podcast. And I admitted that to Stormy Daniels, of all people. And I like Stormy. I'm not going to judge her on all this stuff. I'm just, Jesus gives me the ability to love everybody. But so I admitted to her how I was molested. And it started working on me, and it opened up these things in my heart that I had forgotten about because I had gone on and found success. My ex-wife and I, we had a nice house, we had cars, we had kids, we had, I became a politician. I had all this stuff. I never dealt with the baggage of my childhood, which damaged me. Didn't give me the ability to, I never cried in my life till I was in my 50s. Yeah, check that one off. Okay? Wow. Yeah, I never, and here's a little celebration. I never slept. I'm looking now and I'm in my little studio apartment here, and I'm looking over. I never slept in my own bed until I was 54 years old, which was 3 nights ago. Everything was an air mattress in hotel rooms or someone else's equipment.
You just bought your own bed 3 nights ago?
It was bought for me, but yes, I got a bed in this apartment. So I never had I never had. So my point is that I've had all that baggage and damage. You brought it up, right? And so, but it took 53 years. And how did I decide not to commit suicide? I was speaking to God on December 17th of 2022, actually December 16th. It was about 10:30 p.m. I called and made mention to all my friends and people in my circle, including my ex-girlfriend at the time. I'm going into the woods for 3 days. I didn't know God. I didn't read a Bible then. I didn't know anything. I just said God was talking to me. And I knew I was hearing the voice, but it was also then the other side saying, you're not worthy. You've lost everything. You've lost millions of dollars. You've lost relationships. You're about ready to lose this relationship. You're about ready to lose your, any reputation you might have gained. Everyone thinks you're a loser. I'd grown a beard out, put sunglasses on, and put a hat on so I could disguise myself out of shame for 4 or 5 years that I walked around in my community after I left politics and failed and failed and failed. And so I was done. And so I went and I said to God, I was talking to God. I was by the water at 77, an address called 77 Anthony Street, 77. I'm big on numbers. Yeah. My ex-girlfriend was born in 1977. My father was 77 years old. I had a lot of issues with 77 last year, but my point is that I went into that moment and man, I took all the rounds out of the rifle, and I was sitting there with the trigger and with my finger on it, and I was willing to say, give me a second. I was willing to, I wanted to hear the click, right? So wanted to hear the click was just like symbolism, right? And so, but I knew I'd emptied all the rounds. And so, because I've been proficient with weapons my whole life. And so I put the rifle down. I was listening to Eric Thomas, E.T., the famous motivational speaker. I was reading the Bible. I was calling and texting my friends and saying how I just got this amazing, like I've been talking and God's talking to me, and I didn't feel at all depressed or sad. And so when you asked me the question, how I didn't, I almost inadvertently killed myself because I was going to pull a trigger to a gun that I didn't think I had a bullet in.
It did?
And I did not pull the trigger then, but when I woke up at 2:30 in the morning after on 16th, 17th, 2:30 a.m., I got up, I stretched, I was smiling, and I pulled that trigger, and the bullet came out of the front of that gun, and it would have been in my throat, and it would have been if I wanted to hear the click. And so
Wow.
for someone that went in there not wanting to consider suicide, I didn't want to, and then it almost happened anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I don't know if this story, resonates, but it's like, that's how dark places we can go. And ever since that moment I came out, I was clear headed. I came out of that weekend in a series of things, including being at one of the ultimate things that actually led to a breakup in my relationship was that I admitted that about 2 weeks after that, I went to a business meeting, a lunch, right? I'm going to call it a business lunch for qualifications of the previous me, who I used to be, because it was at a strip bar. And it was to celebrate the sale of a business that never got sold. It was just fictitious things I would make up so I could satisfy. And the minute I walked into that place, my knees started shaking. I went into the bathroom and I took a knee and I asked Jesus to take me in a strip bar in Connecticut. And ever since then, I've just been on a series of things, including Asbury University. I went there because God called me. God's spoken to me on so many levels and turned my life from 33 cents in a bank account and homeless to and hopeless to living every day with just an amazing smile and just appreciating. So that's kind of what happened that night. So
wow. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. A little uncomfortable right now. I feel like I should.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry. I hope I didn't overwhelm you with that. It's kind of a lot, right? I'm sorry, man.
No, that like my heart just ached. That's just amazing. That's a miracle. But it reminds me of a reel that I've done. I think I have it actually pinned on my TikTok. It's one of the top 3 reels, I think. But it's similar to my story, kind of, that even though I suffered in that marriage so much, and even though I didn't commit suicide, for me, it was like when I was set free from that, like when I filed for divorce and I made him leave the home, it's like the story by Stephen Hawking, about Stephen Hawking, how when he was 21, he came up with this motor neuron disease. I'm not sure if you watched my reel, but every day since then has been a bonus for him. And when I shared this reel, I got really emotional because for me, like every day since then, since he's left, has literally been a bonus for me. And I've always
how long's it been?
It's been 3 years now. This month is 3 years that he's left. And he still comes to the house to pick up the kids sometimes because he lives nearby.
Are you guys better?
It's better. It's better. Like, I still feel really uncomfortable around him. I don't even like getting eye contact with him. I communicate with him as little as possible.
Do you still have any feelings, or I mean, if it's too personal? No. I mean, just none of that is emotionally connected anymore. You're done with that.
No, but we were never emotionally connected, and this goes back to the narcissism and your question. So, I didn't realize this, but narcissists, they can't love people and they can't love themselves, right? And they don't know how to have an emotional connection with people. And I can honestly say, like, I never really loved him. I was a single mom. He was really good with my son at the time. So I felt like, okay, he's loved. This is good. This is okay. This is a good situation. I literally called off the marriage. I called it off. And then I went back to him and said, okay, let's get married. I was in a really bad place emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And I saw the red flags. There were major red flags. And I did it anyway because I felt so crappy about myself, like you did. With your experiences, they create these limiting beliefs. Like, it's never going to get any better than this. These are the cards dealt for me, and I don't deserve any more. Like, literally, how he proposed to me is the worst proposal on earth. And we're just sitting on the couch making out in my house, and he looks at me. He says, "I want to get married. Let's go to the mall right now. Let's bring Tiara, your best friend, and let's go to the mall, and you can pick out your ring." To the mall.
I don't know the man, but I think it's a little cheesy. I think maybe some roses, maybe at the local gas station, would have been good to stop at least.
Awful. But I accepted that because I felt like I didn't have.
What was your heart like when he said that to you? Did you get like the feelings inside? They were real for you, those emotions?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like, oh wow, he was the first guy who actually said, like, there was other guys who were like, let's get married. Like, I want to marry you. Basically the same thing. I've never had like an official proposal. And but he was like, I remember feeling kind of like,
women are looking at you right now and listening to you, and they're like, yeah, you're so pretty, and you've had this experience 1,000 times. That's what women are thinking right now.
No, I've never.
I'm being serious.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm just saying whatever. So
I've never had an official proposal, and it was like, it made me feel kind of excited and fun, but I felt really bad about it. Like, later on I felt bad, and then going to the mall, and I wanted the $600 little band with little diamonds, but I picked the $300 one because he put me in a position where I felt bad for him. I knew he didn't make a lot of money, and so I felt guilty. I'll just pick the $300 one because it's like the cheapest one.
Right. So no
Anyway,
preparation, no thought, and sometimes
no
spontaneous is
thought.
cool, right? But it's got to be the right spontaneous. And clearly, then at that moment,
Yeah,
it was more of probably it was the ships in the middle of the night passing. You were at the right position in your life
right.
to be taken advantage of. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And I was in a weak place. I just didn't have very high expectations. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
value myself very much at all. And so it wasn't good. But yeah, that's a narcissist for you.
So do you think he was aware of taking advantage of you then? Do you think when he was like he knew securing you, getting you locked down, so to speak, was what
Mhm.
he needed to do and he accomplished his goal? Like it didn't matter really emotionally or lovingly, but it was more about that narcissist. I need to control this situation.
Right. And it's also, they like short engagement. So we only knew each other for 5 months before we got married. And the crazy thing is he was in the active army and he proposed to me 2 months after we met,
Mm-hmm,
maybe.
mm-hmm.
And I was like, no way. Like he was being deployed. He would have been deployed 5 weeks after we got married. And I said, I'm not
Oh
going to
wow.
marry you and then have you be deployed for 15 months.
Mm-hmm,
So I said no at first, but then he talked me into it. And he he got his way. He always wanted to move to Hawaii and marry this like green-eyed Hawaiian girl.
mm-hmm,
And I'm not Hawaiian actually. I'm born and raised in Hawaii, but I'm not
mm-hmm,
actually Hawaiian. And so he got what he wanted. And I was
mm-hmm.
this weak, naive, insecure person who was a single mom. And another quick story, but the church, I don't know if you've heard this story, but the church made me feel like crap and made me feel really cheap because they had me get up on stage and repent for having a baby out of wedlock. And so that did a number on my psyche that would last for me.
Wait. Because listen, I'm a Christian, and I hate hearing these stories because
Yeah,
I hear a lot of them, and not to stop the conversation, but I
yeah.
just want to ask you. So you went in front of a church, and this church body, whoever was in charge, said, "Hey, you need to stand in front of us
Mhm.
and tell us how sorry you are for the things you've already acknowledged with Christ." They wanted you to
Yeah.
do it in front of them.
In front of the whole congregation up on stage.
Are they still open in business?
Yeah, the pastors, I found out just kind of recently actually that the pastor's done that to several other young girls who have gotten pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tell people the story, they're like, "What? That's so nuts." Like I should have told the pastor, "Yeah, okay, sure, I'll do that, but everybody else needs to get up behind me."
Mm-hmm.
Like because the only sin you can't the sin, they call it the sin, right? You can't hide as being pregnant. You can hide pornography and addiction and all those other things.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
thought that he was doing, I don't know what, he thought that because I was involved in the church, he wanted to set a
Yeah.
good example of if you do this, you're going to have to humble yourself and get up on stage
Mm-hmm.
and do this. And so I did get up on stage and I did use it as an opportunity to share people
Mm-hmm.
what people like me need. And there was a lot of very judgmental people in the church who didn't want to help me, who didn't want to love me. And there was a few people who were really kind and who were just like, Anna, we love you. Like it doesn't matter what you do. And some people like, we still love you, as if that's going to help. Oh, you still love me? Thanks. Like, okay, that makes
Does
me feel
any of
better.
your family, Anna, did any of your family go to that same church, or was that a church that
Yeah,
you independent?
they all
Oh,
went to the same church. I
do
ended
they
up leaving.
still?
No, I
They
actually
all.
went, funny story. I actually went back to that church last week with all three of my children because a new pastor had taken over.
Okay.
And I really respect that pastor. So we went. But I don't go to church right now on the North Shore because there's three Christian churches on the North Shore. All three
Mm-hmm.
of them
Mm-hmm.
have like I've learned a huge lesson. I don't believe that most churches don't know how to handle divorce,
Mm-hmm.
narcissism, or alcoholism. They don't.
Interesting.
Like I
Interesting.
think they think it's just enough to read the Bible and to pray
Do
and to
you
go to
think?
Bible.
Let me ask you. I'm sorry because I have this ADD thing, and I
Yeah,
do apologize. I
yeah,
should have taken
yeah.
more medicine today. I don't take medicine, but
Okay.
is
Yeah.
it possible though that you think the Bible? Because when I'm learning about the Bible, it's obviously a lot of men dominated conversations in the Bible, right? Men were writing the
Right.
Bible. We all know this. And there is. And listen, I'm going to say this, and not in a wrong way. I do believe a man has a position and a woman has a position
Mhm,
in the world we are in.
mhm.
But from your perspective, you think the Bible kind of enforced that in a way that gave men false concepts of controlling women?
Well, you think it gives them false concepts, like the Bible
Yeah.
has
Yeah,
permission?
yeah. And I'm asking,
I
and
mean,
listen.
yeah.
God's telling me I have a permission to talk and ask and be curious. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out for myself. Do you think that might be like maybe the Bible verses have taught some of us along the way that it's okay maybe to be that domineering male figure and almost grow
Yeah.
narcissist?
I mean, I think so. I mean, the Bible says that like the man is the head and, women shouldn't really teach, right? Whatever. Like I'm it's weird because I've never been to a church where there's been a female teacher. I have actually once, and I kind of just felt like it was just didn't sit right with me. I'm sure a
Hmm.
lot of feminists are going to listen to this and get really
So why didn't it sit right though?
irritated because of what the Bible says, right? And I don't know, maybe I just need to be more open-minded, or maybe that's the way it should be, but I just wasn't raised going to churches where I think that
So
they have a lot to offer, but they've, so
no, I mean, one of the things is it's interesting, and this is not to beat up church because I believe church is the
yeah,
best place all of us need to go. I think church, everyone should run out to the church today and just be. I think we all need more God in our lives, but I don't require four walls and someone with
right,
a leather bound book to tell me exactly how to live. I want to really search that out on
right.
my own relationship with God. Do you think? Do you think that the relationship with church had influenced you to be weaker as a young woman or stronger? I'm going to ask the question that way.
No, I think it was definitely weaker. Like I feel like I was put in this religious box. Grew up so judgmental, so legalistic. I would look at people if they were smoking or if they wore skimpy bikini and just judge them and be like, wow, I cannot believe that that parent is letting that child blah, blah, blah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, the whole thing about being put on stage made me feel like a very cheap person, like God was punishing me and I
Mm-hmm.
inadvertently was punishing myself. So obviously that would make me feel weak. That would cause me to
Mm-hmm.
make bad decisions and accept really toxic people into my life and tolerate things that I would never tolerate if I had been healthier
Right.
spiritually and emotionally, right?
Interesting. So you found yourself understanding that piece, but you never gave up on the Bible. And this is where I want to
So,
say this is the real exciting part about it is you still found that belief of God and love of the Lord and
mhm,
Savior, and
right,
you still were finding and navigating through that, even though you needed to kind of extract some of those bad influences that
right.
maybe we're exposing. Yeah.
And I do want to say this too is that I've never been angry at God. And I'm not saying it's wrong if you are angry at God. People say
Mm-hmm.
to me, how could you still love God with
Mm-hmm.
all the things that people have done to you? How could you still go to church? Because I was going to say that was the first church that had me get up on stage and repent. The second church, my ex-husband and I went to the two pastors weekly for years to get counseling, which was a
Mm-hmm.
complete waste of time because back then I didn't know that narcissists don't see the need to work on themselves and they won't really follow through with the homework, right? That they're given. And so I told the pastors, I was like, hey, I think we're dealing with alcoholism here. He won't stop drinking and it's hurting our marriage. Well, both the pastors drink. They drink whiskey and shoot arrows and
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the pastors said to me, I don't think your husband's an alcoholic. And I was really pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
I felt so alone. And I asked the other pastor, can we separate? Can you support a separation
Mm-hmm.
for the sake of restoration?
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't help me. And I felt so alone. I felt so judged. They thought I was crazy and they didn't understand alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I
So
say that.
but when you noticed this and you brought it up to the church when you were dealing with them,
Right.
you were getting the pushback,
Yes.
and you weren't feeling that okay, even welcoming you and even giving you a little bit of credibility to your concerns. They weren't giving you
Right.
any of that.
No. It's like they looked down at me because I was this crazy woman who was upset because I didn't understand why he wouldn't stop drinking and why he kept lying to me all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And to them, I probably just looked crazy and they didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to help me or be a part of it. So I was like, okay, screw this. I'm I'm not going to stay here and deal with this. Our home life was so toxic. It was so bad. I was like awful, fighting, never physical abuse,
When
but
did it start? Because you talked about when you first, he popped the question, brought you to the mall.
right.
This guy was a real Romeo. He got you the $300 system and all this other good stuff. And you kind of went into this. Did you start to think about narcissism or the behaviors? Not calling it narcissism. Did you see it right away, like right out of the
No,
box?
10 years, probably 10 years. So
So you were
right
together
after
for a while then. This wasn't
I
overnight.
yeah.
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
tell you in like 30 seconds. So
Okay.
we got married 5 months after we met. So I didn't really know him.
Yep.
5 weeks after we got married, he got deployed to Iraq for 15 months. But
Okay.
halfway he came home and he came home for 21 days. I got pregnant with our first child, my second child. I was really pissed off about because I didn't want to be pregnant by myself again.
Mm-hmm.
And so he left for the whole pregnancy, came back at the end. And for the next 9 years, I tried to fix our marriage and I was like in fix it mode. It's also my
Mm-hmm.
personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we had one more child and it just there was no love, there was no connection, no nothing. So finally, like I told you, when I went to Al-Anon, I realized, okay, I'm dealing with alcoholism. And his dad was a gnarly alcoholic and died when my ex was only 10.
Oh, wow.
So that was awful.
He knew,
yeah, he knew. So that's like runs in the family. His twin brother is also a gnarly alcoholic. And then it was probably a year later, I realized I was dealing with narcissism. And so it took me a long time to understand what I was dealing with. And I felt like I was a crazy person. I didn't understand why I couldn't fix it. Like, to me, it's simple. In my thinking, in a non-narcissistic mind, it's like white and black. Okay, we'll just go do this. We'll work on ourselves. We'll do the homework. We'll come back in a week and we'll just baby steps towards health, right? That's not how they think. And if you were real, okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go with your thought.
I was going to say, as far as like your possible narcissism, people can heal from narcissism, but it's very rare. It's super rare. So it sounds like in your case, maybe you had a lot of narcissistic traits, but you had this like moment of a come to God moment, right? Where that really changed the direction of your life and you started to work on yourself. And that can be the case, but it's very, very rare. So maybe you were narcissistic, but you're coming out of that because you're willing to work on yourself and to help other people without getting anything in return.
I'm not getting, I will promise you this. I'm not making I'm not securing the friendships I had or the relationships. I mean, my own family isn't happy with me talking like this. I mean, at 54, I'm supposed to be the quiet, guy in the corner bar, drinking some beer, watching the football game at night, going to bed early. And here I am, I'm out here really trying to fix not just me, but I really feel this in passion, like sort of like just driven inside of me to help other people, because you see, I did have a choice to make, and I chose to live. And so why live wasting another minute of my life without trying to fix something, especially with the past. I have forgiven myself and I have asked for forgiveness, but I can't change people. So I've decided how I can live. It's a tough process. We can talk about it later on. It's been a tough journey from my perspective. But talking about the narcissist that you were living with, when you first understood that he was a narcissist, you said it took about 9 years between the time you started to where you're like, whoa. What educated you in that 9 years for you to get yourself into that position to realize where you'd been?
Well, no, not a whole lot of education at all. But the interesting thing is, so probably about, maybe 7 years into the marriage, and he had deployed a lot. So I was home with the kids, I was homeschooling. So I was home a lot and he was gone, which I feel like kind of helped. But there was so many signs of narcissism that I didn't even know the word narcissism until probably 9 years into the marriage. But so I wasn't really educated about it at all. I was just going to church. Oh, this is what I was going to say, which is like also one of my soapboxes, is that it irritates me when pastors and people just tell you, oh, you can fix it by just reading your Bible and just praying. I've now learned that a relationship with God is like a two-sided coin, right? It's like, oh, just heard this quote. Work as if you depend on it and pray as if God depended on it. So it's like on the one side of the coin is the praying and the surrendering to Christ and trusting him to do what I can't do. But on the other side of the coin is personal growth. It's like the verse says, it says, work out your fear with trembling, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. And also like we're changed from glory to glory, right? It's like from situation to situation, we can be changed, but we have to do the work. We have to be aware of our patterns and the negative loops we're in and our limiting beliefs. And we've got to choose to practice rewiring our brain, right?
Yes.
And so it's not enough just to say pray. That is not, I firmly believe that's not enough, because I did that my entire marriage on my knees, praying in tears, and nothing ever changed.
Well, I mean, you got to practice what you're praying about, right? You got to get in there and you have to practice. And so to that point, let me do this, because we're almost at a full hour here. And how much more time do we have tonight with you? Because I feel like this is going to be a few different sit downs, because there's a lot to talk about. How long do we have?
I have a meeting in 50 minutes.
50 or 15?
50. So at 1 o'clock my time. And about.
Okay. So why don't we do this? I'm going to back out of here. We're going to end this first episode, right? This first podcast, and we're going to come back into the room. I'm going to go grab a drink and sit back down, and we're going to wrap it up in 45 minutes. So I'll meet you back here and we'll finish up this discussion. This is a discussion, obviously, with, Anna has this incredible experience. And I love the fact, I feel like I'm watching a movie when you're giving, because you're really good at what you do. You really give a full picture, is that I'm in this moment, 9 years after the marriage, and you're getting to this moment. But what I want to know is, because you, like many women across the world, there's been a revolution of realization. It's not the burn your bra revelation. It's the take control. And I have a whole opinion of people who are facing, and I don't want to do this in the wrong way, so we'll come back and talk about it, but menopause and menopause. Yes, I've created menopause. There is a condition called menopause, and I want to talk about how that plays into the narcissist as well when we come back on the next podcast right here with our good friend and new friend from Hawaii. Go and check her out. Now, where can people find you? We'll do this on the next platform too, but where can people find you at when they want to check you out?
Okay, TikTok, Wind in Her Hair podcast, and at Instagram, at Analia.
There it is. And we'll be back with the next episode. And you want to make sure you tune in because you're going to find out exactly what Anna's got to say about narcissism, her life, and determine whether or not Kevin is a narcissist right here. Woo. All that and more is coming soon to you.